You two are really a bad fate. You compete for the first place when you go to school, and you can meet together when you work. As Alger Raglan spoke, his best friend Arvin Yerkes whispered. I subconsciously looked up and looked at the light-filled platform. Alger Raglan is tall in a well-fitting suit. The strap of the indigo guest card around the neck was properly pressed under the collar of the shirt, and with the movement, the information on the card was clearly visible. Guest Alger Raglan, Executive Director of Huijing Group, Vice Chairman of the Summit. Alger Raglan speaks at a steady pace about the current state of the industry. But his eyes were not idle, and after accurately catching my gaze, he looked at me without a trace. I rolled my eyes at him speechlessly, turned my head and began to talk to Arvin Yerkes. Without him, I would have been the vice president of this summit. Let's just let this slut be arrogant for a few more days. Arvin Yerkes laughed as he looked around and elbowed me. TSK, I didn't expect Alger Raglan to be 28 years old and still have such a market. Who said it wasn't? From the first second he came on stage, there was a little girl who couldn't hold his breath and exclaimed. At this time, when I saw him talking, my eyes were full of love, and I wanted to eat him alive with my eyes. However, Alger Raglan is calm and indifferent, just like the expression he had when he threw out the milk tea snacks given by girls with a black face in college. I speak boldly and feudal. Little man, he should be a little white face with this kind of appearance, and he should be a wife and a child at home. Why do you grab the first place with me? Arvin Yerkes didn't know what to think of, and laughed. You are both single, you marry him, and by the way, along with the Huijing Group, you have the best of both worlds. Huijing Group has a strong development momentum, and its valuation has also risen in the past 2 years. Arvin Yerkes was a little anxious when he saw that I was silent. No, you really want to marry Alger Raglan? I shook my head and laughed lewdly. TSK, I'm just fantasizing about the beautiful picture of Huijing, sweeping him out of the house after I have it. The Huijing family has a big business, can he be a man? Before I finished my spring and autumn dream, the tide of applause knocked me back to reality. Arvin Yerkes and I sat in the first row, with Alger Raglan next to me. He sat down and grabbed a bottle of water to drink. I hurriedly withdrew my big teeth, but I was still caught. What are you talking about? Alger Raglan's voice is cold, and it's a little mute from his long speech. What do you care I talk about? Isn't it because you want to inquire about any trade secrets? I smiled slightly, gracefully and politely. Let's talk about if you take the Huijing Group as a dowry, will anyone be willing to marry you? Ahem, ahem. He instantly choked on the incomplete water, and coughed a few times. His face became colder than when he was on stage just now. It's a dowry, not a dowry, and I don't like men. Yo, I know a lot. I don't read much of the boys' articles in private. Alger Raglan, I didn't expect that there was a sullen heart hidden beneath your old-fashioned and boring exterior. Read less articles like this. It doesn't match your personality. I was angry, but Alger Raglan's lips curled into a plausible smile. You used my account to surf the internet the year before last, and I learned by the way. My blood couldn't stop pouring down my cheeks, like my underwear had been ripped off in public. Alger Raglan, you are perverted. You still have a habit of flipping through other people's browsing records. Alger Raglan spread his hands helplessly. It can't be helped. It's just that the names of those appalling articles are too prominent in the business data and news. Oh, count you ruthless? I took a deep breath, glared at him fiercely, twisted my head, and unilaterally and silently announced that I had broken off my friendship for 1 hour. As soon as the topic ended, some girls couldn't bear it anymore, and moved to the front row with their waists low. Hello, I'm Luna of the Dragon Partnership. I'm very interested in what you just said. Can I add you to Weshit, so that we can communicate more, and seek cooperation opportunities in the future? The girl's long hair was waist-length, her beautiful curvature was hanging down wantonly, and her facial makeup was delicate and flawless, beautiful. Arvin Yerkes and I were next to each other drooling with envy. Alger Raglan, you damn girl, what a life. Who knew that? He restrained his smile. The aura is like a thin layer of snow, covered with a cedar tree in winter, making it difficult for people to approach. I'm sorry, maybe it's not convenient. Then Alger Raglan hooked his hand, and his assistant came over with great insight. Miss Luna, I'm Alger Raglan's assistant. This is my business card. You can contact me at any time, and I will relay it for you. Luna smiled and accepted the business card from her assistant. After being rejected, he was unwilling to stay longer, and hurriedly returned to his place. I watched her go back, swallowing my saliva, and asking questions about my soul. Alger Raglan, you really don't like men. Alger Raglan looked past me and sighed softly. If you can't speak, don't speak. Alger Raglan, director of Huijing Group, was involved in a car accident on the outskirts of the city today, and has been taken to the hospital, the details of which are unknown. This event may bring about stock market shocks, and rewrite the history of Huijing Group. The car radio played the latest news, and I hurried to the inpatient department with my bag. Don't ask me why I didn't carry the gifts, because I've heard that Alger Raglan didn't have much of a problem except that he was a little silly when he hit his head on the ground. He's stupid, didn't I get out of it? Not beating gongs and drums, buying boxes of fireworks, and setting off them on the spot is already very face-saving. Before I entered the room, I could hear the noise inside. Alger Raglan's voice of surprise and anger came through the crack in the door. President Sid Ivan, you liar. My dream is to ski all the snowy mountains. How can I not figure out how to start a company? Lao Tzu is most annoyed by the hypocrisy in the business field. Sid Ivan choked on his words, and then slowed down before he spoke. Back then, you suddenly said that you wanted to be a man with a mature and stable personality, and a stable and reliable job, and you didn't want family resources, so you plunged into working hard. We can't stop it. Beatrice Lloyd, who was on the side, nodded frantically in agreement. Alger Raglan was silent for a moment, his brow furrowed. Impossible. His face was full of anger. I'm sure I've been brainwashed by some pyramid scheme. Call the police. It was so funny that I almost didn't laugh out loud. Hey, it looks like I'm just around the corner to take over Huijing. I reached for the door, determined to watch Alger Raglan's humiliating moments. The ward fell silent for a moment, except for the sound of medical equipment monitoring the body. Sid Ivan saw me come in and beckoned me to sit down. Rita Hamilton, you can come as you say, and what water bring? He stared at my left hand and swallowed it back. Oh, it's really a straight male group. This is the latest show bag, not a big fruit basket with handles. I pouted, ignoring him, and turned to meet Alger Raglan's eyes. He sat on the hospital bed, the small abrasions on the corners of his forehead had been carefully medicated, and his thin lips were slightly pale. It's very quiet now, and it's a good thing to stare at me. And when he was clamoring to call the police, the blazing eyes made me uncomfortable, and I tilted my head, and raised my hand to shake it twice in front of his eyes. You won't bump into me, and don't even know me, will you? Alger Raglan somehow became short of breath, and a suspicious blush crept up the side of his face. The number on the monitoring instrument broke through the threshold, and the sound was loud and sharp in an instant. Damn, don't scare me, what's wrong? Beatrice Lloyd, who had been sitting, bounced up, and frantically pressed the medical bell next to the bed. Sid Ivan thought that the monitor was broken, and bang knocked twice to try to fix it. In the midst of the chaos, Alger Raglan watched me stumble and speak. Hello, I am the executive director of Huijing Group. Mature and stable personality, stable and reliable work. Can you marry me? In an instant, the whole world was silent. Sid Ivan glanced at the screen, which was extremely normal except for his heartbeat, and sat back with a curse. I was stuck in place with a question mark on my head. Beatrice Lloyd looked left and right, and weakly asked, inside, do you still need to call a doctor? Call a fart. Sid Ivan crossed Erlang's legs and rolled his eyes out of the sky. Alger Raglan was undistracted, his eyes staring at me, his obsidian eyes sparkling and watery. Do you also own a company? What a coincidence, so did I. Can you add a contact information and communicate more? Sid Ivan, Lao Tzu is the most annoying in business. As soon as I woke up, I was pulled by the two of them to ask questions. It's terrible, can I go with you? Sid Ivan, call the police, I've been brainwashed. Alger Raglan said one thing, and Sid Ivan said another. The man on the hospital bed frowned slightly, his tone instantly became aggrieved, and he raised his hand and pointed directly at Sid Ivan. Look at him, he's still murdering me. Beatrice Lloyd, let's go, let's play him dead. Sid Ivan gasped and slammed the door. Crazy, the world is finally crazy. Dude, you don't call it amnesia, it's called soul changing. I rubbed my nose in embarrassment, avoiding the overly clear gaze and trying to steer the conversation elsewhere. If I don't call someone back, will you apologize to him? Alger Raglan shook his head firmly, eyes glued to me. They're not as important as you. Pretty. Beatrice Lloyd finally strode out of the room with a black face. Finally, after a comprehensive diagnosis, Alger Raglan's memory stopped in the summer of his junior year of high school, just before he met me. The doctor said that the symptoms of amnesia most likely do not last long. As the absorption of blood clots in the brain gradually recovers, this process is accelerated by keeping the patient in a safe and comfortable environment. So, who provided him with this comfortable environment? Haha, it's me. His uncle and aunt were abroad, and Sid Ivan and Beatrice Lloyd didn't want to see him again. Alger Raglan said that his house was too big for him to live in. It's really been 8 lifetimes of blood mold. I want to take over Huijing Group, not take over its boss. I seriously doubt that any god sent my wish wrong. His thoughts were interrupted by Alger Raglan, who appeared at the door with his suitcase in tow. Sister, which room do I live in? Where to stay? Swallow's nest on the rooftop. What is the manifestation of a 28-year-old soul, living in the body of a 18-year-old? Alger Raglan has his unique answer. He can't help himself with being addicted to small videos. When you open your eyes, you brush. He lived in the second bedroom, and the mess didn't bother me at all. The bad thing is that the old Alger Raglan likes to apply what he has learned. In the morning, I was reading the report in the study, and he squirmed and came over. If I turn into a cockroach, will you love me? My face was beaming. It's really angry, then I won't break the law if I destroy you. Remember to transfer the company's shares to me, and my sister will keep it for you. Alger Raglan. At noon, after a video conference, Alger Raglan pouted and pouted. I'll hold my breath until you ignore me. I smiled at death. I'll laugh until your funeral is over. Alger Raglan, murderer. In the evening, when he finally had time to relax, he planned to make a souffle to cultivate his sentiments, and he was curious to pick his head. What are you doing? Me, stand in your shoes. Excuse me, Alger Raglan, are you a chatterbox? Alger Raglan, who was yelled, was so angry that her daughter-in-law seemed to be on the island to help me separate the yolks and whites, trying to curry favor. I made a fierce silence gesture to him, and he nodded reluctantly. Well, yes, without the twitter in the ears, the world is quiet. Alger Raglan looks like he's finding new fun. The next day, he sat on a lazy couch and held his phone. The thin light shone through the veil on the slightly pressed eyebrow bone, and his face was slightly distressed. Alger Raglan muttered inside. Is this trending now? He looked so hard that he didn't notice that I was walking around behind me. I took the opportunity to glance at the screen. Good guy. The screen full of men is dancing, twisting his hips, shrugging his shoulders and biting his lip, like the cowherd shop concubine. And the more you cross, the less you go. Alger Raglan. Don't you really like men? Within a few days, I found a suspicious courier at my doorstep. I am not at home during the day on weekdays, and I often can't get a call because of a meeting. So the familiar courier brother stacks the express mail directly at the door every time. I looked down and wanted to get it in. A misguided, appalling word jumped into the retina. Pure lust chess bracelet men's plus size. Yes, yes, yes. A new type of scam. How did such a filthy thing end up on my doorstep? Squint your eyes and take a closer look at the courier information. I know who bought such a chain that can't be put on the table. I stormed through the door, eager to slap the carton on Alger Raglan's face. Explain, explain. What do you want? Alger Raglan's eyes drooped, and his tone was unusually reasonable. If you don't want me to move my mouth, I can always move my body. So you're going to be half naked, and then wriggle around with this broken chain. Seeing that I was angry, Alger Raglan thought for a moment with his not-so-bright head and then raised 2 fingers. I swear when I learn it, only you can see it. Broad shoulders and narrow waist, regular daily exercise, healthy and clean diet. So he has abdominal muscles, and he should move. Stop, you kid almost took me into the ditch. I slowly gathered my face, urging him to quickly dispose of the things he bought and not pollute my eyes. Alger Raglan bargained in a low voice. Can't I practice secretly? What do you think? I'm home, not a bar. If you want to practice, go back to your own home. In the end, Alger Raglan reluctantly put his side dancing plans on hold. Order to stay at my house. The wicked still need the wicked. And Alger Raglan soon ran out of the mine to fix the moth. Only a few friends and close subordinates knew about his amnesia, and although the company couldn't make a big mess, it was important for Alger Raglan to make important decisions. After the skin injury healed, Alger Raglan began to take over the backlog. Early on weekend mornings, I washed up and put on my slippers, and walked out of the bedroom. The blackout curtains in the living room are very effective, and there is only one light left in the dull space. The floor-to-ceiling lights on the side of the sofa are soft and warm, and all are coated with a layer of brown light and shadow. Alger Raglan sat on the ground, his whole body lying on the coffee table, breathing evenly, apparently asleep. In front of him was a computer with a black screen, surrounded by scattered papers and books, and underneath my ass was my expensive wool carpet. Let's hope he didn't drool over there. Hearing the movement, Alger Raglan looked up sleepily, his voice mixed with a thick nasal voice. Are you awake? I snuggled up on the couch and found the remote control to manipulate the curtains to open automatically. I didn't expect 18-year-old Alger Raglan to be a workaholic. Alger Raglan was unconscious, half closed. I don't want to, but I'm always responsible for my employees. If the project is stalled for personal reasons, there is a high chance that their preliminary work will be in vain. The president who calls for wind and rain and does whatever he wants should only appear in novels. I tilted my head, and Alger Raglan was bathed in the morning light, dressed in a calm navy blue silk pajamas, with a look of disgust. The line between years and years begins to blur. Even if he didn't like it that much, even if it was difficult, little Alger Raglan still accepted it, and worked hard for it. He shouted that he wanted to ski, but he honestly received all the work in his hands. Rebellion and a sense of responsibility are intertwined in the blood, year after year, and never change. Alger Raglan looked around at the stacks of paper around him, and his face began to look bittersweet. There are so many things that need to be relearned and practiced. I have a headache when I see a string of zeros on the contract. As he spoke, he moved over and shook my legs like a coquettish one. I heard that my sister is very good at managing a business. Can you teach me? A child who doesn't have a sister is like a piece of grass. Woo woo. Just promise me. I'll definitely study hard. Alger Raglan snorted, the corners of his mouth curling downward, eager to hold his eyes red. The small Alger Raglan and the big Alger Raglan are not the same breed at all. Can you put on the clothes first? Whoa. The shirt should be buttoned to the top before the amnesia, and the pajamas after the amnesia are only buttoned one. As he swayed from side to side, his cold white skin was completely exposed to the air. Swallowing hard, I wanted to refuse. Thanks, I knew you were the best. If you didn't say yes? I laughed back as Alger Raglan smirked at the stealth tail wagging into a propeller. I raised my eyebrows and quickly reached across his tight waist and abdomen, feeling the slightly cool touch of jade condense on my fingertips. I'll take the reward myself. Don't touch it, don't touch it. Take advantage of this kid's unseen world to face my brainless obsession now. This kind of advantage must be taken advantage of. When he recovered, I would make up this story and play it on a loop for hours, threatening him to make me a cow and a horse. Little Alger Raglan stiffened and froze in place. He looked at himself and at me in disbelief, blushing and burning. The viscous and congealed atmosphere is punctuated by the abrupt ringing of the doorbell. I glanced sideways at Alger Raglan to get dressed, and get up and open the door. Rare guest. When I saw the outsiders at the door, I couldn't help but sigh. The man wears an elegant gray suit, his eyes are warm and light hidden behind the light spectacle lenses, and his lips are hooked with a suitable smile. Gail Temple is also a successful young entrepreneur. Because we live in the same community, we are more familiar than ordinary people when we come and go. The Mid-Autumn Festival is here. I'll send you a mooncake. Gail Temple has a low voice, and speaks at an unhurried pace. I took the gift box with very textured packaging and thanked him, waiting for his next words. It's not annoyed to be seen through. Gail Temple is smiling even more. Actually, I want to invite you to participate in the new product launch of our group next month, and there will be other friends on the same day. But we are close friends, and it would be too insincere to send an official invitation directly, and let the people below spread the news. So I came over and asked if you would like to participate. You're the only one I've ever come to invite, and I'm looking forward to seeing you. I pondered for a moment. Number 3's words, "I'm fine." In the next second, a male voice abruptly inserted into the conversation. "Aren't we going skiing on the 3rd? Alger Raglan stood by the door without hesitation, his hands clasped to his chest. "Is there such a thing? No one informed me." I frowned and asked him with my eyes, and Alger Raglan raised his chin slightly, and his face was full of words, very unhappy. "I want to make trouble." Gail Temple was taken aback for a moment, and quickly adjusted. "Alger Raglan, what a coincidence. I didn't expect you to ask Rita Hamilton out first." But I was abrupt. Alger Raglan shook hands with Gail Temple perfunctorily, and dragged them for 2,580,000. "Holy, do you want the whole world to know that you're not in your right mind?" I couldn't scold Alger Raglan in front of Gail Temple, so I gritted my teeth, and changed the time of the skiing trip. "We can go skating at the end of this month, not necessarily on the 3rd of next month." Alger Raglan nodded and turned to Gail Temple. "In that case, my time on the 3rd is also free, and Gail Temple doesn't mind inviting another person. Depend on, your company's business has nothing to do with us. What are you participating in?" Gail Temple was unfazed and smiling. "Of course, it's an honor for Alger Raglan to come," sending Gail Temple away. Before I could curse, Alger Raglan suddenly lowered his momentum, buried his head in my neck socket like a loss of strength, and his tone became slimy. "My head is dizzy. Load, load." When I didn't respond to him, he shook his head slightly and rubbed his hair against my face. "Does my sister like that kind of gentleness? I can too. Don't drive me away." "Okay, stop, stop. You learn to be gentle again." "I'm afraid I won't be able to stand it," I quickly prevaricated. "I'm sure I like you the most, and I won't drive you away." Standing on the snow in a pink turtle butt pad, I was devastated. "Alger Raglan, I can't keep my word unless I promise him to go skiing at the end of the month. Not to mention the temper. I was not even happy to go to the hospital for a re-examination. How is it more difficult to raise him than to take care of children?" I struggled to move halfway up the mountain, and even with Alger Raglan's moment of correctiveness, I kept falling apart every 10 minutes. "No, I'll take a break. You can go play by yourself first." I gasped for breath and slowly glided my snowboard to the edge of the slope to avoid getting in the way of others. Alger Raglan was reluctant to do so, smiling and sliding downhill. The mountains are high enough to catch a glimpse of the bright sky. The sunset melts gold. The sea of clouds churns. The mist flows, and the world seems to be covered with a light veil. The voices are gone, and everything is silent. I didn't know how long I stood until I felt the temperature drop before the night and my legs stiffen. Hopefully, Alger Raglan will come back and help his old mother down the mountain. I tried to move my feet, but the force was not light but suddenly fell on the lower back. My center of gravity was unstable, subconsciously to cling to something, and then came back to his senses, and was already firmly held in his arms. The standard princess hug should be quite romantic, but he was holding me, and sliding down as fast as he could. The ends of my hair were swept up by the cold wind. My eyes were closed. I couldn't even scream, and I could only hear the sound of my heartbeat every time I tilted and rotated through the ramps. And the other chest, that was clinging to it, was vibrating slightly. "Alger Raglan, he's laughing." Then the lazy and wanton voice entered the ears. "Don't be afraid. Open your eyes." As if to reassure me, his arms tightened a little. The snow mist that rubbed together scattered around. Tilting his head slightly was Alger Raglan wearing snow goggles. His expression could not be seen clearly, but the curvature of the corners of his lips betrayed him. The sky takes on a cool blue hue unique to sunset, like the dividing line between eternity and nothingness, which is intoxicating. "Well, it feels pretty good. Rita Hamilton, do you have time? I'd like to talk to you." I had just changed into a snow suit, and came out of the locker area, and a man stopped me. "She wears a tweed knit suit with a tonal handbag that doesn't fit in with her surroundings." "Sorry, no." I turned sideways and wanted to leave, too lazy to listen to this stranger who knew my last name. She stepped forward and spoke as fast as she could, trying to pique my curiosity. "I want to remind Rita Hamilton not to trust the people around her." especially those with whom she has a deep friendship and a pure face, who are often the source of hurt and pain. TSK. You can get your Alger Raglan ID card directly. I motioned for her to continue. I heard that Huijing Group, as a pharmaceutical company, has recently intended to enter the cosmetics industry across borders, with the goal of capturing a share of the domestic high-end cosmetics market. I know that Rita Hamilton has been in the beauty industry for several years, and Huijing is powerful, and it is foreseeable that Huijing will inevitably encroach on the living space of your brand. Rita Hamilton is so defenseless against Alger Raglan that he may be a tiger. She paused, accentuating the affirmation in her tone. If you don't believe me, look it up. A high-level strategic meeting was held yesterday within the Huijing Group, and Alger Raglan was also present. I know a lot. It seems that there are some people in the Huijing Group who can't keep their mouths shut. Oh, that's it. I'll go first. The woman was stunned, puzzled by my attitude. Aren't you angry? I pretended to nod my head. I'm angry. I'm so angry. I'm not going to beat him up. I left, ignoring her astonished eyes. I walked around to the back door of the rest area, which was close to the edge fence of the snow slopes, and the manicured and cramped trail was almost unattended. There is no need to talk about the price of raw materials supplied by upstream manufacturers. We can open our own production line. The rest goes according to plan. Staccato sounds came from around the corner. Alger Raglan is methodically arranging his work over the phone. The sky had completely darkened, with the occasional starry sight and a cool white light pouring out of the rest area. Alger Raglan paused and turned around as if he had felt something. I was sure to look at him and smile playfully. Regained your memory. The hotel we stayed in was not far from the ski slopes, and no one spoke 10 minutes away. Silence freezes in the air, and it's cold and unbearable. 28-year-old Alger Raglan is accustomed to restraining his emotions, and his whole body is shrouded in a layer of snow and fog, which is unrealistic. When I got to the hotel, he followed me to the door of my room. Come in if you want. I opened the door and took off my coat to adjust the temperature of the air conditioner. Alger Raglan sat on the couch. His head hung and didn't dare to look at me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to deceive you. He closed his eyes and forced himself to continue. After recovering my memory, everything turned into a dream in an instant, and I was afraid to wake up and let go. I tell myself every day, what about drinking to quench my thirst? At least I can find the look you look at me, at every sunrise and sunset, even if it is for 8-year-old Alger Raglan. Like a thief, I pray for your love in the misplaced times. With that last word, Alger Raglan seemed to exhaust all his strength, and leaned back on the couch warily. I wanted to ask a lot, thought for a while, and mentioned the one that interests me the most. What did Sid Ivan mean when he was in the hospital that day? He said you suddenly wanted to be a mature and steady person. Is it for me, too? Alger Raglan nodded, his expression quite broken. At the end of a public class at university, I caught up with you, and wanted to ask you to have dinner together, and I happened to hear you talking to a friend. Your friend said, you and Alger Raglan are competing for first place in this exam. You two are simply golden boys and girls. You say, I can't afford his kind of person who looks like he has a girlfriend in every hair, and he is mature and stable at work, which is my ideal type. Alger Raglan recalls earnestly, even raising his voice, learning even the tone and frustration of the girl's voice. How can he remember the events of the year of the monkey, and the month of the horse so clearly? I couldn't hold back my laughter, and was glared at by him without any threat. You go on. You go on. I pursed my lips as Alger Raglan continued with a sigh. At that time, I wondered if I would become like that, and you would give me some of your likes. But it doesn't seem to be. Your ideal type changes over time, and I don't know it anymore. At the age of 18, I can see the miasma clearly but am not mature enough. And at the age of 28, I am mature enough but I can't guess your heart. I leaned against the solid wood screen next to the couch and looked at him. Alger Raglan looked up, just in time to look up at me, and he unconsciously lowered his voice, deflated. I'm done. You can scold me. I rubbed my temples in anguish. So you think I'm more partial to you when I'm 18 years old, and you don't know what type I like when you're 28 years old. So you can only be careful to maintain the status quo, and don't dare to tell me about your memory. The tongue twister made him react for 2 seconds. then nodded heavily. TSK. What is this? Eat your own vinegar and steal your own happiness. Alger Raglan. You are who you are, and what is in your bones has not changed. You can support the company at the age of 18, and you can speed on the snow at the age of 28, so why be cocooned? I raised my eyebrows and smiled lightly. So if you think I like you in a certain period, don't doubt it. What I like must be the whole you. Alger Raglan's face was stunned, his head like a machine in disrepair finally starting to work. He was desperate for answers. Then do you like me when I'm old? Like, little liar. Who doesn't like that? I spread my hands in front of Alger Raglan, who was so excited that he forgot to breathe. In fact, I have long found out that he has recovered his memory, and after playing with him for so long, am I really idle? Gale Temple is not an old friend of Alger Raglan from high school, and I didn't call anyone by name when I came to deliver mooncakes, but he knew to call Gale Temple when he came up. He still boasts of being mature and steady, but the fox tail really can't be hidden. No. 3. Lyman Hotel Haking. I thought you'd wear a grand outfit. After the launch, there was a dinner party, and Alger Raglan's simple black suit with bright and unobtrusive fancy vivid diamond cufflinks made it look very low-key in the crowd of Sidburns. Alger Raglan smirked, clearing the status of the original match. Why bother to be a junior? The little video you watched when you lost your memory is really putting it in your head. I ignored him and turned my attention to the stage. The show took place in the form of a catwalk to show off the costumes and makeup, and Alger Raglan and I were placed in the front row with a great view. It's not a long process, and Gale Temple has come out to thank you, but I frowned and went to find the source. The girl who stopped me at the ski resort last time still has a staff ID on her chest. When I realized that I had found her, I hurriedly looked away. Oh, it turned out to be someone from Gale Temple. No, Alger Raglan whispered. He was impatient to listen to Gale Temple's speech, and his attention was all on me. Well, last time I was at the ski resort, she came to me and told me that Huijing was going to enter the beauty industry and squeeze the market share of my brand, and she also said that I was calling it a tiger to cause trouble. Alger Raglan nodded, a little noncommittal. I struck him with my elbow. Why aren't you afraid of me being angry? He raised his eyebrows and explained the geography. Of course, it is the general trend for pharmaceutical companies to take advantage of their advantages to expand their business. From what I know about you, you'll just be excited and feel like you're finally going to have a chance to compete with me on the same track. Alger Raglan's hot breath touched my ear, causing the small patch of skin to shiver. The market is big, and competition can bring new vitality. Only brainless people will be soldiers, and treat everything as an imaginary enemy. But she's here to warn you to watch out for what I'm doing. I looked back again, and Gale Temple seemed to be finished, and the girl was looking at him intently in the dark. With a gentle expression, I rolled my eyes and made bold inferences. She likes Gale Temple, but thinks Gale Temple likes me, so she sacrifices to kick you out and fulfill me and Gale Temple. Alger Raglan pouted in displeasure. Maybe Gale Temple told her to break us up. I smiled. I didn't want to hit him. Gale Temple probably wouldn't have used such a childish method. TSK. He didn't forget to look at you on stage and smile at you. It's really a thief. Alger Raglan, who is overbrained, is about to turn himself into a pufferfish. I quickly squeezed his hand and teased. You just said that you want to have the style of your original partner. I don't care if you refuse him quickly. He said that you will never have anything to do with him outside of work in your life. Alger Raglan snorted and chirped, with no bearing to speak of. I couldn't help but laugh, and soothe Alger Raglan as I turned my head to lock on to the girl's place. Okay, fine, but before I do that, I'll be sure. Towards the end of the dinner, Gale Temple finally took a brief break from socializing, and I called him to the corner of the ballroom. It's dimly lit, so it's hard to be quiet. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Are you going to reject my overtures? Gale Temple raised the sign with a light smile, and said the question in affirmation. Clever. He tilted his head to Alger Raglan, who was waiting for me not far away, and said in a low voice, I wish I wasn't that smart. Gale Temple, as a friend, I really hope that you will cherish the people in front of you instead of focusing on me. Gale Temple grimaced. Does Rita Hamilton have to reject me this way? I stared at his pale pupils and shook my head. No, I'm trying to tell you that people tend to lose resolution when they are accustomed to existence. I used to be who I used to be, and maybe so am you today. The girl's name was Olivia, and she really liked Gale Temple. She thought Gale Temple had no affection for her, but I didn't think so. A girl whose position is not low, but whose thoughts leak out is obvious, and who can even confide her heart to me, a stranger who has only met twice, must be escorted. If there is no deep family power, it is the credit of Gale Temple's boss. He recognized the purity of her ability, and felt sorry for a simple person, like her whirling in the quagmire of society. So he took her with him, away from all filth. What is the difference between such a preference and my unconditional trust and connivance in Alger Raglan? Do you only treat her as a sister? That's what Gale Temple should be thinking about. Human emotions are complex, and they often spread inadvertently and wantonly. Why did you talk for so long? Are you still upset that I rejected him? This person is so stingy that I will be jealous if I refuse others for a long time. Alger Raglan reluctantly agreed, and walked out of the venue holding my hand. The night was as cold as water, and the cold wind in early autumn was blowing, and he helped me fasten my coat uneasily. I was supposed to leave in the car but in a rare good mood, and I dragged Alger Raglan around outside. Alger Raglan, do you feel sorry? I gave up skiing for the sake of my unintentional remarks back then. Alger Raglan frowned, obviously not expecting me to ask this. Of course not. I just made a certain choice at a certain point, and I don't have to talk about regret from the heart. Looking at the person who was still eating flying vinegar just now, he was seriously dragging the advanced text, and I laughed out loud. Well, 28-year-old Alger Raglan is more literate than 18-year-old. Alger Raglan was proud to have automatically ignored my teasing. Alger Raglan, 28, is much better than 18? Like, he looked around like a thief, and then mysteriously lowered his head and whispered to me, "What? Didn't I order you to throw that broken chain away?" I bounced away in horror and couldn't believe what I heard. Alger Raglan's Adam's apple rolls unnaturally twice. Can't you buy a new one? I deliberately chose the best looks. I've been practicing that dance for a long time, so if you don't want to watch it, forget it. After speaking, he turned his head away angrily, and there were words in his mouth. My muscles are so much stronger than their gym line products. Can I still jump in shorts? Actually, I don't wear it. I can accept that. Ahem. Cough. I'm going to cover his mouth with my eyes. I see. I don't think it's okay. The end.